All right, so thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a very special guest. We have with us the founder of Adored Beast Apothecary, Julie Ann Lee. And so we just recently, a few weeks ago, actually started onboarding Adored Beast Apothecary products in our store. However, you and Adored Beast has been in the natural pet care space for a very, very long time. So you are new to our store, but you're definitely not new to the industry. And so I just wanted to start out with, could you give us a little bit of your story, your background, and kind of how you got started with all of the Adored Beast products?
Well, it's a long one. So I'm going to try to do it really fast. I grew up on a rescue. My mom had a dog rescue in Ontario. And so it just sort of came naturally to me. My mom
Mm.
was very holistic, like very, very holistic. We weren't vaccinated. And it was, we saw a herbalist.
And
And
this was for you as a
as a
child.
kid,
Yeah.
yeah, as a little kid, my brother, who is like 72 years old, had severe asthma when he was 3
Mm.
and was treated with naturopathy like a long time, like that's like almost 70 years ago. And that's just the way we did things. But then I showed horses competitively, and when I was growing up, and I also did ballet, and I wasn't always sort of on the fence about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. So I wound up getting into a lot of conventional means of treating my animals, uh, you know, as horrified as my mother and my grandmother were. And it was very interesting because I would they would sit with me at dinner time. We were a very supportive family, and they would say things to me like, Julie, we love you, and we want to support everything that you do, but uh ever since you've been doing this, all the animals are getting sick. Like my
Mm.
mom never fed kibble, or my grandmother. They would actually make huge pots of food that my father would always wind up eating on our stove for all the animals, like the cats and the dogs and everything. It was just, and they hunted. And so I kind of jumped the fence into conventional for
Mm.
a pretty long time. And then my dog wound up getting, and I was very stubborn, like super, super stubborn. I'm Irish Yugoslavian, so you can imagine. So my dog got cancer, and
Mm.
I at 4, and I was so devastated. I went to my mom and I said, I don't know what to do. Like I'm so disillusioned. And she said, well, you do call Virginia, who was our herbalist.
Mm.
And so I did. And make a very long story short, we did herbal suppositories, and we did all kinds of stuff with him. And I still took him to an internal medicine specialist, and because I didn't want to just fool around. I wanted to, even back then, I was very either like really, really good medicine and specialists, or I didn't really like the fact that um, kind of everybody did everything and sort of did it
Mm.
in a mediocre way. I don't mean that to be rude,
Right,
but
right.
so anyways, he said to me that the tumor was about the size of a small lemon, and that it was very invasive, and it was going to be a terrible surgery, and we're going to have to resect some of his bowel. And so, but they couldn't do it for a while. So by the time I went back, I think it was about 11 days that the surgery actually happened. It was the size of a grape, completely encapsulated. And all I remember, his name was Dr. Smith, and he said to me, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. So
Wow.
at that point, I decided that I didn't want to do conventional veterinary medicine anymore. I wanted to do something holistic. I didn't think I even wanted to deal with animals anymore. So
Wow.
I went to Spain after Broody recovered to visit my girlfriend. I got sick in Spain, really sick, with a sort of a irritable bowel thing that I would get when I was stressed, when I was really
Mm.
stressed, sort of a stress induced one. And I went to the hospital, and I got treated in the hospital by a homeopath.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know. And I felt like, okay, I'm normally sick for sometimes 2 weeks because I'd lose so much blood. And
Yeah.
I was, I was better. Like I was like backpacking in 3 days.
Wow.
So it just turned my life around, and I wound up, I was thinking going to England, but back then there was all of these restrictions with taking your animals over. And then one of the professors was starting a 4-year program at UBC in British Columbia, a human homeopathic medicine course. So I flew out and I did my interview and was accepted, and I moved out with all my animals to BC. And then 2 days later, I got into class. 2 days later, after I got there, I was in 2 days into the program. I was in my anatomy physiology class, and I just started putting everything into animals. And I said to my prof, like, I started asking all these questions about animals. And anyways, over the next month, I was driving him insane because I would be like, well, will this work with this? And what about Cushing's syndrome? Do you know anything about that? And blah, blah, blah. So he just finally said, why don't you just do a veterinary homeopathic program? And I said, well, I there isn't a full-time program here. Anyways, he got me into the British Homeopathic Veterinary Surgeons program in England.
Oh.
So I did 4 years of human homeopathic medicine at UBC. And then I would pack up in May and get on a plane and go to England and do from May till September with them. And I did that for almost 5 years.
Wow.
And I went to India with them and trained with Rajan Sankaran, and I went to Greece with them. This was all after.
That's incredible.
And yeah, so I opened up a clinic, a veterinary clinic. Like BC was just very, very progressive when it comes to holistic medicine.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. And before I even graduated, I had people calling me, including vets, saying, we've heard that you're doing this and da 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 da. So
That's amazing.
I opened up a clinic, and the rest was history. It was the first licensed holistic veterinary clinic in Canada.
Wow.
And it just grew in leaps and bounds. And I started making products, right? I
Mhm.
started like going to Gaia, which was our local herbal store, and putting products together for my patients. And then they started working like amazing. And I would just, my technicians and everything would say to me, can we just go buy this in bulk and make it and then just dispense it? Because these 4 things, you're prescribing them a lot.
Right.
So it's kind of how it started. And then I wound up opening a huge veterinary hospital in BC, 7,000 square feet, with full surgery, chiropractic, acupuncture, rehab, like the whole 9 yards. And then I actually taught a 3-year postgraduate homeopathic veterinary program in BC. And then I burnt out,
Oh, yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So
It's tough.
I
It's a really tough area to be in.
It is, and especially back then. This was in 1994.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I was surprised that when you were saying how you had veterinarians coming to you, because still to this day, I mean, it's 2021 and we have some veterinarians that say, what are you doing? Of course they need flea and tick, prevention chemicals. Of course they need this and that. And, it's such an uphill battle, I think, for so many pet
Mhm.
owners still to this day. I can't imagine what you had to go through, close to 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Adored Beast came because we weren't allowed to use the word health, wellness,
Yeah,
integrative. We weren't even back then. We weren't even allowed to use a word like that.
right.
So they just wanted me to be called Broadway Veterinary Hospital, and I said, "Well, I'm not doing that because, anyways." So Adored Beast came from putting in about 30 different names and then turning down all the names. And then I was so discouraged one day. I went home, and my girlfriend had bought me this really beautiful book about love. And there was a chapter on it inside that, I always think things happen for a reason. I went through a really difficult relationship, and I was married and whatever. And she bought me this book, and then I was reading this book because it's just a really wonderful book. But there's a whole chapter on and it's called Beasts Adored. So it's like the history of
Mm.
love. So it's about the love of animals. And I opened it up and I looked at it and I thought, that's exactly how I feel about animals. Like, I absolutely adore every animal. And then I thought, what about Adored Beast? And I put it into the veterinary association and they said no. And I
Oh.
said, why? It has nothing to do with holistic. And they said, well, we think that the word beast is offensive.
Oh,
So I said to them, well, then let's use it, because then no one will come to me and you guys will be happy. So they
that
gave
is
it to
so
me.
strange, but yeah,
Yeah,
nothing surprises me these days.
no. So I moved out here to, by the time I left, I had, I think there was over 60 veterinarians that graduated from the program that I did from all over the place,
Awesome.
in Brazil. And um, so by then I felt comfortable actually leaving the practice, because I was on call 24/7, 7 days a week. I worked really closely with oncology with Guelph University and lots of different, I had a really, really big clinic. When I left, it was insane. I had to have an audit done to sell it. And they said that I had treated over 35,000 patients.
Wow.
I know. I was like, I had no
High
idea.
volume, yeah.
I had no idea. So I moved out here, and then I decided that I was going to launch the products.
Yeah.
So, and try and help people that couldn't have access to holistic vets.
Right.
So in the areas where people weren't able to just pick up the phone and 6 holistic vets in their city or whatever,
Right.
would
Right.
be able to use these products and get a lot more benefit from them. That's why I decided to do protocols. Oh, my dog's coming up the stairs. That's why I decided to do protocols, right? Hey, guys. I know, now they're going to be just crazy.
They're adorable.
Um, so I figured if I put together protocols, it would be easier for people to go, okay, I understand this. I do step 1, step 2, step 3,
Right.
and for specific things. So it took me a long time to get going, because when I was hand picking the ingredients in my hospital, I knew where they were coming from. I knew the source. I knew their quality. But when I actually started looking at it on a big scale, it was very different,
Right.
really different. Try and find something at that scale that matched up with my belief system in sourcing, which is ethical, and really the big one is ethical, low carbon
Hmm.
footprint, and professional grade, right? So I did finally find someone, and we still use them, even though they had to put on a 10,000 square foot addition to their compounding facility to handle Adored Beast stuff in Canada. So
Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
guess it's a win-win for everyone.
Oh, it is. It really is. And we are the only animals that she does. She compounds. I do the formulas. I choose what ingredients I want, and then she compounds them for us.
Hmm.
And she's a compounding facility for naturopathic doctors. That's what she does. So it is above, people ask me about grades and things
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. So it's I look at pet grade, and then I look at sort of superstore, drugstore grade, and then I look at the grades that you would find in a health food store where people are more conscientious and aware. And then professional grade, which is, going and being formulated by doctors or by
Hmm.
naturopaths or holistic vets or whatever.
And so
So
that was one of my questions. You did mention that you actually were the one that formulated all of the Adored Beast products. So you're really the brains behind pretty much everything that Adored Beast has pushed out. Is that correct?
yes, I mean, I have a business partner, Dion Albert, and without him, I don't know what I would do, because that part of the business
Yeah.
is very important, and really, to be able to to reach as many people as we do, I needed that side. But from the formulation point of view, from sort of the vision point of view, from the sourcing and the ethics and all that, that's been me all along. And what's kind of cool is that our products, I use those products in my clinic. So I know how they work with thousands of patients. So it's not like, oh, I decided on formulating something because it's a, kind of, right now, whole, supplements for animals is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And people don't understand, you don't need to have any clinical trials. You don't need to, somebody could go, oh, I'm a business person and I see the potential in this financially. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to take $5 million and I'm going to put it into marketing and I'm going to do this and this and this. And they have zero experience treating animals or in the trenches of actually seeing what works and what doesn't work, like Dr. Morgan, right? Like she's in it. So she's it's tangible to her what's working and what isn't working. Like I always say I love research. I mean, I'm doing a bunch of cancer research with Dalhousie University right now. And I love research. I'm a research nerd, but empirical proof to me trumps everything. Like, sitting and looking at an animal with, severe skin disease, cancer, inflammatory bowel disease, Cushing's, and seeing them get better, looking at blood work change, looking at ultrasounds, looking at all of that stuff for decades with thousands of animals. Like, how can you not look at that and go, this is even a stronger testimonial that holistic medicine works.
Absolutely. And, I will say that we try, before we onboard things, we always try out the products ourselves so that we have that hands-on experience. And so I actually the first thing I tried was your healthy gut products, because I have an older cat that has always had off and on like some GI issues, constipation, things like that. And so I actually tried it out myself. And one of the things, first of all, that I loved about your products is I feel like the serving size is absolutely amazing. The problem with my cats is they're extremely picky eaters.
Yes.
And so when I read like a 1/16 of a teaspoon, I'm like, I don't even have a teaspoon like that is that small. And it has made it so easy for me to actually administer something for the first time to a picky cat. And I noticed a change in her stool regularity probably within a few days. I mean, it was way faster. I was figuring that it would probably take a little bit for her to get used to it and make some changes, but I was actually very impressed. And so, I grabbed some other things off the shelf to try for my pets too. The other thing that we tried is one of your protocols. And I really wanted you to speak to some of your protocols because I think that makes you very unique. Because a lot of, protocols can't be, well, not that they can't be, but they aren't recommended for the masses. Like, there aren't many people that say, oh, you have, a yeast problem, here's a protocol for that. Most people say, well, try this, try that, try this, try that. So I really appreciate that about what you guys have put together, because I feel like part of the obstacles is getting something good into our pets, whether it's the owner having a better understanding of what to do step by step, and also just the ease of you kind of did all of the hard work and the research, and they just have to follow some really simple instructions. So I really love that about what you guys do. And I just wanted you to talk just a little bit high level about some of your protocols, and then I had a few questions about some of the individual protocols.
Sure. I have goosebumps that you said that, first of all. No, the reason is because that was the mission, right? The mission of Adored Beast Apothecary was to be able to, exactly what I said before, like be able to almost put like a little mini vet in people's houses. So
right. It comes in a nice little box altogether with really easy instructions. I mean, it doesn't really get much easier than that to, combine these different products into a really powerful protocol.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
So when I look at disease, I can't look at it compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just use leaky gut because that's the first protocol we came out with. And the reason I came out with leaky gut was because I still do believe this, that the majority of diseases stem from that. So they might look like Cushing's, they might look like allergies, they may look like inflammatory bowel disease, whatever. It might even look like torn cruciate ligaments, right? Like repetitive injuries or but so I came out with that and everyone thought I was insane because no one even knew what leaky gut was back then. And I was like, no, we got to do this. I have to educate people on what leaky gut is because no matter what we do and no matter what they try, if they aren't healing the gut, you're gonna take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and we're never gonna get there. So when I looked at leaky gut at the clinic, it's like, okay, what has to happen in order for the gut to heal? Well, it's not going to happen instantaneously. So when the gut leaks or when you have inflammatory process in the gut and the gut starts to, the lining starts to stretch and food particles and everything that should be contained in the gut actually goes into the bloodstream and creates an inflammatory reaction. And then dependent on the animal or the person and its predisposition of disease, like what you might get diabetes, I might get inflammatory bowel disease, and we could be under the same amounts of stress, eating the same kind of food, but our predisposition will lead us down that thing. So when you have inflammation, that's what happens. So one, you have to heal the gut, but that's not going to happen immediately. So you have to put things in place in order to help the body repair while the gut's repairing. So the anti-vaccinosis that goes in it, that came from me understanding that if I didn't deal with the side effects of vaccines, a lot of times we would get breakthrough pathology during, right? So they would get a little better and then they'd go backwards and then be like, okay, you know what? I know you haven't been vaccinated for 5 years and that's amazing. Or maybe you haven't even been vaccinated at all, but the mother was, or the father was, or whatever.
Right.
I would do the anti-vaccinosis and the animal would exponentially improve along with all the other stuff. So the idea of having the protocol is to go through the steps that I would have gone through in my clinic treating an animal.
Right.
So I would, start off with anti-vaccinosis, and then what you said, you gave your cat the healthy gut, the enzyme. The philosophy behind that is that it breaks down the food into smaller particles so that when it does leak through the gut, which is gonna until the gut heals, that the insult to the body isn't as drastic. Right. So you're feeding pre and probiotics, and then Gut Soothe has all of the herbs like slippery elm, marshmallow root, DGL, L-glutamine, all of that to try and heal the mucosal lining of the gut and soothe it. And then one thing that's really different is that then I look at the systems of the body. So when you're healing something like that, the liver really takes a hit because it tries to detox. So you're supporting the liver. And then the last thing is you're using a homeopathic remedy that helps the body heal, but also helps to decrease scarring. Because a lot of people are out there saying that they're healing leaky gut. The problem is that if you think of something being injured or traumatized, when that heals, there's a scar. And where that scar is in the gut lining will be there'll be less absorption of nutrients where the scarring is. So then we deal with the scar tissue and things. So it's a really, like you said, high level. It's really a high level protocol. It's exactly like if I sat in front of you and you brought me your cat or your dog, it would be the steps that I would have gone through in order to help heal their gut. So that's what the protocols are all about.
I will say the top 2 things that we get questions on a daily basis, it feels like it's getting almost out of control. IBD and allergies.
Yeah.
So many pets are having some type of digestive issue, whether it's acid reflux, IBD, pancreatitis, and allergies, the red itchy skin, biting at themselves, things like that. And of course, we know both of those things have a very, very strong correlation with what's going on in the gut. And, that's one of the reasons why doing that step-by-step protocol that you were talking about, I feel like is so important, because we have seen when someone just wants to, do a quick fix, it may work, if they put them on something that kind of binds up their stools, it may work, for a few weeks. Then as soon as they're not on that, you revert back to the original issue, because you're not really getting to the root cause of what is causing all of these other, secondary reactions from the body. And so that, I think, is really, really important, because we see that all the time. And, people don't even know where to start. And I will say on that, my second question would be, say someone comes to us and, their dog has allergies or something along those lines, and they want to do the leaky gut protocol. Is there any downside to doing the leaky gut protocol if it turns out that, leaky gut isn't a huge issue for them?
No.
I guess, would it do any harm to do
No.
the protocol if that's not really a major issue?
No, it definitely won't do any harm. The only time, and this is when I came out with Yeasty Beast, the only time that I've seen any kind of issues is if a dog has as much yeast as they have leaky gut, or they had the yeast first and the yeast destroyed the gut lining. So what happens with leaky gut is the more that you use it, the stronger the immunity gets. It's like it's a powerhouse little box to strengthen the immunity, because you're strengthening the gut so much, and you're detoxifying the liver, and you're pulling out heavy metals, and you're doing chelation. So what can happen if you really ramp up the immune system and there is a crap ton of yeast in there, it will kill the yeast too quickly, and then they'll get a yeast die-off, and then which is a good thing, but sometimes a yeast die-off can look like the yeast is getting worse. They can get itchier, because there's like 15 toxins in yeast, right? Yeast produces about 15 different kinds of really severe toxins, but when they die, they produce about 10 times as many, because as they're sort of decomposing, it's almost like they off gas. I mean, it's not really what they do, but it's kind of that theory. So when that happens, the dogs or the cat or whatever gets itchier, right? It seems like they're getting itchier. So what if that ever happens, if something gets itchier, more times than not, what's happening is that we're healing the body too quickly, if you can even imagine. And it's creating a die-off. So then that's when I go into the Yeasty Beast now. So stop the leaky gut, go into Yeasty Beast, kill the yeast, and then go back to the leaky gut to heal the gut lining, which is, like I said, completely trashed by yeast. Yeast is just brutal on the lining of the gut.
So that's actually really good information to know. So is there anything, if someone is doing your leaky gut protocol, is there anything besides itching that might be a sign that it might be a good idea to pause and do your yeast protocol before completing the leaky gut? Or is itching seem to be the main?
Itching would be the main thing, because usually when they have yeast, it's, itchy skin, or really, really discharging, stinky, red, inflamed ears, scooting their bum a lot. That can be a sign of it too. So if that really ramps up, then usually that's what it means. But the leaky gut protocol for things like IBD, we don't see side effects, and that's not even a side effect. We don't see any correlation of of increasing the immune system or strengthening or balancing the immune system as much as that protocol does, we don't see an issue when it comes to digestive system stuff.
Right.
Digestive system stuff usually gets on it and they just breeze through it, getting better and better and better all the time. The only time that we do see any kind of a hiccup is with yeast. And then we actually have a it's called a for animals that have severe skin disease, like really severe skin disease, which I know there's lots out there. We'll do a 3-part protocol where we start on our Fido's Flora, and then we go on to Leaky Gut, then we go back on Fido's Flora, then we go on Yeasty Beast, then we go back on Fido's Flora, then we go back on Leaky Gut, and we rotate through. All of our products are built to rotate, that you can, they're all synergistic, they all work together. You don't ever have to worry about doing something wrong because they all support different parts of the systems in the body. So were you gonna ask me about Fido's Flora? I don't know if you were gonna or not.
Yeah. But I did. So before we get to that, because I have a new love for soil-based probiotics as well, the humic and fulvic acid. So I do want to get to that, but I just wanted, while we were talking about it, could you just briefly explain the yeast protocol, and kind of, besides like the itching in the ears, is there anything else that would lead someone to say I should start with the yeast protocol, or different things that might be useful for?
So the Yeasty Beast is a very different protocol. We are the opposite. The Yeasty Beast also came with my philosophy of the overcultured canine, which means that, you know, when I started looking at gut health, which was in 2004, like I was really, really into it. At that point, I wrote an article for the Vancouver Sun, and the Vet Association made me retract it, because at that point they said that probiotics do not help dogs and cats, and they made me literally retract. Like, this is how crazy back just
I'm not even surprised, honestly.
Can you imagine back? Like, it's just so what's happened though is it's wonderful that there's so much interest and so much research being done about gut health, but everybody's jumping on a probiotic bandwagon without really understanding gut health, without really understanding probiotics, and without really understanding how important the diversity of the gut is, right? The ecosystem of the gut. So then what happens is, if you just bombard I'm just going to use your dog with yogurt and fermented foods and a ton of probiotics, and you're not paying attention to what you're doing, you can actually create leaky gut, because the native bacteria, which is the bacteria that you're born with, or your puppy's born with, or your kitten's born with, it lives in the gut lining. It stays there. And then we have transient bacteria that comes into the gut, which are like the workers that come from out of town into the city, do their work, and then they go back out of town to go home, right? So, but when they're there, they need to eat. So if you're not paying attention to properly giving enough prebiotics as well, what can happen is that the native bacteria start to starve, because the worker bacteria and the transient bacteria are consuming all the food, all the prebiotic in the body. If they're starving and they can't leave, they wind up eating their house, which is the gut lining. So that's one thing. The next thing is, when you overpopulate and you really start to kill the yeast fast, you get a die-off. So the overcultured canine idea that I wrote about a while back now is that you've got to look at what's actually happening with your animals symptomatically. So if the Yeasty Beast protocol doesn't have probiotics in it, it doesn't have prebiotics in it, it has specific enzymes and specific nutraceuticals and specific herbs to kill yeast, but it kills it and it eats it, which is very different. So you're starving and you're destroying the yeast, but this enzyme is specific to digest the yeast. So that's why it's killing it, but then it's eating it, and it's dying and it's eating it. So you're not all of a sudden getting all of this yeast death, and you have like a graveyard of almost like skeletal systems of the yeast, which then produce all the toxins.
Right.
So Yeasty Beast has a very specific um, uh, way that it works against yeast. It doesn't just kill yeast. It starves it, it destroys it, and then it eats it, so that you're not getting that Herxmeyer reaction, which is
Right.
the yeast die off.
And so for the animals that are suffering from a pretty bad yeast issue, is the protocol something that you would typically recommend, doing kind of one pass with the yeast protocol and then try to repair the gut a little bit with the leaky gut protocol? Or if you have a
For
really
sure.
yeasty animal, would you want to do, 2 yeast protocols? How do you generally kind of structure the healing process in those cases?
So this is the only, like, every animal's unique in that way. Every animal can use these products, but it's up to the pet parent to be able to assess in a way, right? So if you're going to start, if you know that your dog or even your cat well, cats can't actually have Yeasty Beast, but if you know that your dog has a really severe yeast problem, I would be definitely starting with the Yeasty Beast protocol. And then I would bring in some gut healing stuff.
Okay.
And then watch if they still smell sort of like corn chips, if they still feel greasy, if they're still showing symptoms of yeast, then you can go back in with the Yeasty Beast protocol. I love rotating stuff. I feel like the body works really well with that. So I would say that using them in correlation like that is ultimately the best way.
Mm-hmm. So, you also have a few more protocols. I know you have come out with you have a feline leaky gut protocol, and you just launched a small dog leaky gut protocol, as well as the easy peasy. But we're getting close to our hour mark, so I wanted to talk about Fido's Flora, because when I first looked at all of the products that you guys offered, and we were trying to pick some options that we could try ourselves, and not, host the whole thing before we really knew what we were working with and understood, because I feel like from our perspective, there was a lot to learn from Bird Beast, and about all your products. They are very unique. And so Fido's Flora at first was one that I wasn't sure if we actually needed, but now I actually, it's getting onboarded today, ironically, because I have come to really appreciate the humic and fulvic acid ingredients, and that is part of the Fido's Flora. So I guess, could you it's one of your, I think, newer-ish products. So if you could just talk about it a little bit, and then I have some questions.
I'm going to talk about really fast, because Fido's Flora is really not, still to this day, not understood because it's so far-reaching.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, because I made Fido's Flora that if there was only one product that someone could buy, like financially, they could only afford to do one thing, or they were on a desert island and they could only afford to do one gut thing, it would be Fido's Flora. And that's the reason is because it has a canine species bacterial strain. So it is, bar none, different than any other probiotic on the market. There is not one single company that can compare to that probiotic. And that's because, and I'm not saying it's the best, I'm just saying it is completely different. When you look at probiotics, other than soil-based probiotics, are predominantly tested on people, used on people, and they're lactose. They're from cows. They're cattle-based bacteria. So I was lecturing at PEI Veterinary University, and a vet said to me, is it true that we use human bacterial strain or human probiotics for animals? And I said, yes. And this was like years ago. And she said, why? And I said, and I was taken back. And I said, because we don't have species oriented probiotics, meaning taken from the species. The bacteria is actually taken from the species in which you're trying to give to treat the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that process. I was driving home thinking about it, going, oh, there goes my new roof. There goes this, there goes that. And I connected with biologists and scientists, and the bacteria strain in Fido's Flora is made from feces from a dog. That's what it's made from. It was the very first ever on the market. And it's still the one that has the most research. We've spent more money and more time and more energy researching this. We know, we can guarantee that that probiotic can withstand the acidity in a dog's gut, because a dog's gut acidity is very different than a cow, very different than a person. And we don't even know. I mean, we know empirically that it works. I'm not saying that probiotics that come from cows don't work, because they do with dogs. But this we know that fecal material and bacteria that comes from fecal material has its own DNA. It has its own identity. That's why when they do fecal transplants, they can actually sometimes see personality changes in the person or the dog or whatever. So that doesn't happen with this. But what we found out, which is so important to just, I'm going to try really fast to talk about this.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, if we go over, it's not a big deal. So keep going.
So what happened with this is the first thing we wanted to see is, does it go where it needs to go?
Right.
Does it actually survive the gastric acidity of a dog's gut? And yes, it does. And that's in vitro studies and in live studies. The next thing that blew us away is that these two strains, we isolated 11 strains, we picked 2, and that was because of that. The other thing that it does is it helps modulate the immune system. So when you started saying to me about allergies and about inflammatory bowel disease, every time a veterinarian puts your dog on steroids or your cat's on steroids, they're trying to suppress the immune system because the immune system is too high. But then you have secondary problems from that, which is rebound effects, liver disease, a reduced immune system, like the list goes on and on. So what happened with these 2 canine strains is that we've proven it modulates the immune system. So if the immune system goes too high and the body starts to go into an autoimmune disease, it brings it down. If it goes too low, where it would get secondary bacterial infections, it actually brings it up. It has an immune modulating effect, which is like, I don't know. It's like a gift from the heavens when it comes to
it's very
animals.
powerful. Yeah.
Really powerful. But it makes sense that it does that on dogs, because it's fecal material from dogs that has been turned into a probiotic, right? So the body starts to, sometimes when you do like fecal transplants, the body rejects it, right? Because it's a foreign material. The body doesn't reject this probiotic because it isn't foreign, right? It's been fermented and turned into a bacteria that's easily accepted by the body. So that's one big thing. The next thing is, when I looked around and I see how I truly believe that the majority of diseases, a lot of diseases with people and animal, come because of our soil. Our soil is completely void of minerals. So you could be eating the best food, feeding your dogs and cats and ourselves the best food on the planet. If it's growing in a soil, even if it's organic, that in a soil that's void of minerals, you're not getting the nutrient value that you need to get from food.
Right.
So fulvic and humic acid, the ones that we chose, are from the Ice Age. And they are, what's happened is that the Ice Age came, it crushed and covered trees that don't even exist anymore, vegetation that doesn't even exist anymore, different kinds of fruits and vegetables that we don't even have anymore, and it fossilized them almost, for lack of better words, um, millions of years ago. So then what it does is it fulvic and humic acid does a couple of different things. It gives minerals, it chelates the body of the heavy metals. It helps to pull heavy metals and toxins out of the bodies, like glyphosates, like all
Mhm.
of the things that are causing so many diseases right now. And then it helps to um, there's all kinds of documented evidence and research now showing that it actually helps permeability of the gut. So in Fido's Flora, you've got 14 strains so that you have that diversity still. So that you've
Mhm.
got all different kinds of bacteria, which is what you want. You don't want just one or two. And then you've got the two different canine strains that have 5 years of research proving that it has immune modulating effects and can, like I said, withstand the acidity of a dog's gut. And then we've got larch in it still, which is our
Mhm.
probiotic that helps with, metastases of tumors and all kinds of things like that. And then it's got humic and fulvic acid. So that little container doesn't look like much, but it is an incredibly powerful product. Like
Yeah, and
incredibly
it's
powerful.
interesting because hearing you talk about it, I'm like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Like, why didn't I connect the dots myself? But it took it like I almost had to digest like what all went into Fido's Flora before I really appreciated the power that is in that tiny little jar. So
No.
I'm glad you got a chance to talk about it more because you did a much better job than anyone else could have probably done describing it. I will say just probably one or two last questions for you. Um, so you said if someone can, only get one product, you typically would recommend the Fido's Flora because it is so powerful with all of the ingredients. So is that something going back to kind of our yeast and leaky gut protocol discussion? You had mentioned kind of alternating with Fido's Flora.
Yeah,
Do you think in the future is Fido's Flora going to be part of any of your protocols, or is that going to
I
be
don't think
something
so.
that you think will just be kind of in a
Yeah,
rotation?
yeah. Because, a healthy dog that doesn't need the yeasty beast or it doesn't need the leaky gut, right? That, like, let's say the dog is young and has no symptoms. Phytosphere is a perfect thing to have them on, just like
Hmm.
as a maintenance product, because you can't stop them from walking through Roundup and walking through
Right.
environmental toxins, and they're going to be insulted. They're going to be, I mean, it's just we all are. It's not just dogs and cats, but they're lower to the ground, and they're even getting more of it. um I it's a really good product to be using as a maintenance, and it's also a really good product because it really shifts the body. So I like shaking the body up a little bit, but in a very kind, gentle way. So if you've got a really bad allergy case, a really bad skin disease case, or IBD case, or whatever, you've got them on the protocol, and then you sort of interject with the Fido's Flora, and then it helps with more chelation, right? The fulvic helps to pull and rid the body of the toxins that are circulating as the body's healing. Like, it's a really cool little product to interject and to make sure that we're poking the body to go, yes, heal, but don't go crazy, right?
Yeah.
Don't over heal, don't stimulate too much, don't go into like an autoimmune. I'm not saying that it would ever do that, because autoimmune diseases are caused by leaky gut, the majority of them as well. So it's just it's a great way of being able to make sure, like I said, I really love looking at the systems of the body, and I think it's really important to be looking at them all, not just
Right.
the gut, right? We can't just look at the gut. We got to look at the gut. We got to look at the liver. We have to look at the cells, feeding the cells. We have to look at, detoxifying. Like there's so many things to look at, but people get overwhelmed. So when you look at the protocols, it's a way of not being overwhelmed. One thing with Adored Beast, I really want everyone to hear is you don't have to be afraid of it. I have treated some of the sickest animals you could possibly imagine. And I'm all about compassion and I hate's a strong word. I don't like, oh, they're just detoxifying, right? It's like, no. You don't have to do that. You can do this in a really gentle way, right? You can heal the body in a gentle way. You don't have to have all of these like blow up detoxification processes and things, and and that's why I made them so small, right? The amounts that we give are so small because one, there's no fillers. There's not one single solitary filler in all of our products, and I think that animals' foods are so important to them that I never wanted to make a product that overwhelmed their food, something they looked forward to, by it tasting like herbs or tasting like whatever, like flavors or additives or anything like that. So that's the other reason that I made sure it was small amount.
I love it. You're literally, Adored Beasts are about the first products that I have been able to get my cats to even ingest. And to me, that's 90% right there. If my cat won't even eat it, obviously there's no benefit. So I absolutely love that about your products. My last question, which I wrote down kind of before you mentioned it, and this is a big one, so we might go over, but that's okay, is one thing that I really loved about your philosophy that I don't necessarily agree with from other people in the natural pet care industry is I see a lot, people make these drastic changes, whether it's diet, supplements, whatever, and their dog has relatively large reactions. And, people will be like, they're detoxing, it's fine. I'm like, I do understand the principle behind that. But I much prefer what you were saying with like a gentle, very smart detox. So that way you're not overwhelming the body and causing, these kind of secondary reactions, which like you said, with the yeast, it's good, but it also could be stressful for the animal. So I know, like specifically with your liver tonic, that's kind of one of your all of your products I think are pretty much detoxifying in some way, but the liver tonic specifically, and I guess could you just expand a little bit about kind of your philosophy around either just the liver tonic product or detox in general, because that was something that really resonated with me, because it always kind of like one of those things that always bothers me a little bit when these dogs are having these really big reactions and people are like, it's fine, it's good, and I'm like,
I always say, then you go through it.
Yeah, right? It's rough.
I think for me, my love for animals trumps everything. So if I have to work harder and figure it out at 4 o'clock in the morning how to do something where it's not going to be stressful for the animal, I've always done that my whole life. So stress, I've been probably one of the first people to really talk about stress in animals. And it's to me, it's just as a stress in an animal is equally as detrimental as dry dog food or vaccines or flea products. The amount of havoc that stress and fear, anxiety, pain plays on the body is equally as detrimental as anything else that we look at as holistic medicine practitioners to be something negative, right? So that for me also holds true in treatment. So we used to have a thing, Samuel Hahnemann, who's the founder of homeopathy, we had this beautiful sign in my vet clinic that said, above all, do no harm. And that is honestly my philosophy. So you don't need to detox to get better. And an animal, if let's say you're doing a detox and you go, okay, I intuitively know that I'm going to feel some stuff, but this isn't normal. Like, I'm really feeling sick. This is not working with my body. You can say that to your holistic practitioner, or you can go, because you have free will, I'm not taking it anymore. Or in this thing, when I take that, I feel really sick. I don't feel well. Animals can't do that.
Right.
So we 100%, we have to be their stewards, their guardians, to make sure that we have that empathy and not just the control, right? Because we have a lot of control over what we do with our animals. And so I think it's equally as important to me to understand that even though we have control, then that gives us more responsibility to be sure that we're not causing suffering. Because, I believe that. Like, I have heard so many, like my clinic was a primary homeopathic practice. And there are a lot of practitioners that have this give a remedy, wait and see, right? And it's like, well, that might have worked back 100 years ago when human doctors sat by your bedside until you got better. But when you're just waiting and an animal can't tell you how they're feeling, my philosophy is not that. My philosophy is, if so long as the healing process is moving forward, it is so important that we're paying attention to the overall well-being, not just physical, of how our animals are feeling. And that's
I love that.
Adored Beast is about, really.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. You are a wealth of information, and I probably could ask you 37 more questions, but maybe we'll schedule a follow-up down the line. But I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy. I really appreciate you taking the time for us. We've really had fantastic experiences with both your company and your products, so we are happy to be associated with Adored Beast. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, you could send them to us, and then if we don't know, we could probably loop in Adored Beast customer service.
Oh, for sure.
And anything else that
I just want to say that how happy I am that Dr. Morgan's,
yeah, we were a little slow on the uptake, but
no, not about that. Like I'm so about working together, like this industry working together and supporting each other, because it's a growing industry, but it's still a drop in the bucket compared to conventional medicine.
Right.
And Adored Beast is all about collaboration and not competition. And we're all about the bigger picture. And, Dr. Morgan's an incredible veterinarian, an incredible person. And I'm honored that you guys are looking at using the products. And
well, thank you. It's very mutual. We admire you guys too. So it's awesome. We're very excited to finally, I don't know why we didn't do this years ago, but whatever. We're here now.
You know what? I believe that timing is everything. It just wasn't the right time.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Well, we're finally, we have a few hands on deck now, which is before I think we were just running around like crazy trying to get the bare minimum done. So.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna play any outro music, but thank you all so much. Thank you again for your time and everyone that joined us. This video will be posted on our page, and we'll also post on YouTube. So if you missed parts of it, don't worry, you'll get to rewatch the whole thing. Even me not being able to figure out Zoom in the very beginning.
You'll be able to watch that too.
Yeah. You being confused for 5 minutes. All right. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.